Close your eyes and imagine a moment when you ran, heart pounding, breath shallow, not from danger but from love. You thought distance would save you, that solitude would shield you, only to find yourself face to face with a deeper pain. This is the hidden truth of the avoidant heart, a truth that pulses beneath their walls, their silence, their retreat. If you've ever loved someone who pulled away, who built barriers where bridges once stood, you've wondered, do they feel my absence? Does my silence hurt them? You think they're untouched, relieved even when you go no contact? But let me pull you into their world where silence isn't peace, it's a reckoning. When you walk away, you don't just leave them with space, you leave them with the emotions they've spent a lifetime running from. This is not just a story of detachment, it's a journey of awakening for them and for you. Let's unravel why no contact hurts avoidance more than you think, and why your choice to step back is the most powerful act of self-love you'll ever make. When you go no contact, when you choose silence over chasing, an avoidance first reaction is a fleeting sense of relief. It's a truth that cuts like a winter wind, sharp and cold, but it's not about you. It's about their wiring. Avoidants are built on a foundation of fear, not indifference. Closeness, the very thing you offer with an open heart, feels like a trap to them, a threat to their carefully guarded independence. Their nervous system, shaped by years of learning that vulnerability leads to pain, screams retreat when love gets too real. So they pull back, they shut down, they carve out distance to protect themselves from the intensity of connection. When you step away, when you stop reaching, they exhale as if the weight of your love has lifted. They might even convince themselves they're free, that they've escaped the suffocation of intimacy. Picture them in that moment, standing in the quiet they thought they wanted. They tell themselves they're fine, that this is what they needed all along: space, control, solitude. But this relief is a mirage, a fragile illusion that fades under the weight of truth. Avoidants aren't immune to feeling, they're terrified of it. They crave connection just like you, but they've learned to associate it with loss, with overwhelm, with danger. When you go no contact, you give them exactly what they thought they wanted: distance, but that distance doesn't bring peace. It brings a void, a silent ache they can't outrun. At first, they lean into the silence, filling their days with distractions: work, hobbies, new faces, anything to keep the quiet at bay. But slowly, something shifts. A memory flickers, a shared laugh under a summer sky, the warmth of your voice, the way you saw them when they couldn't see themselves. This is where the pain begins, not as a sudden storm, but as a slow, creeping tide. Days, weeks, maybe months later, the relief they clung to starts to unravel. They feel it, a discomfort they can't name, a restlessness that lingers like an uninvited guest. The space they thought would save them becomes a mirror, reflecting the emotions they've spent their lives avoiding. They start to wonder, why hasn't she reached out? Why does this feel so empty? They replay moments they pushed aside, conversations they dismissed, gestures of love they couldn't receive. And in that silence, they're forced to confront a truth they've buried deep. They wanted connection all along, but they didn't know how to hold it without breaking. Avoidants aren't emotionless, they're guarded. Their detachment isn't a sign of indifference, it's a shield forged in moments when vulnerability led to rejection, when emotional needs went unmet. Maybe they grew up in a home where feelings were dismissed, where independence was praised and dependence was a weakness. Over time, they learned that relying on someone else is a risk, that closeness means losing control, that love is a battlefield where they're bound to get hurt. So they built walls not to keep you out, but to keep themselves safe. When they pull away, it's not because they don't care, it's because their heart is sounding an alarm, telling them to retreat before the pain of intimacy swallows them whole. This is why no contact is so powerful. When you walk away, you don't just remove your presence, you remove their safety net. You take away the comfort of knowing you're still there, still waiting, still willing to bridge the gap they created. At first, they might not even register the loss. Avoidants are masters at suppression, pushing emotions down until they're buried beneath layers of denial. They might throw themselves into work, lose themselves in distractions, even convince themselves they've moved on. But emotions, no matter how deeply buried, have a way of rising to the surface. The longer your silence stretches, the louder it becomes. They start to feel the absence in ways they didn't expect, a song that reminds them of you, a quiet moment that echoes with your absence, a realization that the connection they took for granted is gone. This is when the hurt sets in, not as a dramatic outpouring, but as a slow, burning awareness. Avoidants don't process emotions in real time like others might. Where an anxious heart feels the sting of loss immediately, an avoidance pain is delayed, creeping in when the distractions fade, when the silence grows too heavy to ignore. They might not cry, they might not reach out, but they feel it, a gnawing sense that something vital is missing. And because they've spent their lives running from feelings, they don't have the tools to process this pain. They might mask it as irritation, restlessness, or numbness, but it's there, a quiet storm brewing beneath their carefully constructed facade. Your silence is not a punishment. It's a boundary, a declaration that you deserve more than half-hearted love. When you go no contact, you're not just stepping back from them. You're stepping into your own power. You're saying, I am worth more than your indecision, more than your fear, more than your walls. And that act of self-respect shakes them more than they'll ever admit. They assumed you'd chase, that you'd fight for them, that you'd keep the connection alive even when they pulled away. But when you choose yourself, you disrupt their entire world. You force them to face the void they created, the connection they pushed away, the love they couldn't receive. And that, more than anything, is what hurts them. Because it's the one thing they've spent their lives trying to escape. This is not just about their pain, it's about your power. When you go no contact, you're not just walking away from an avoidant. You're walking toward a version of yourself that's stronger, wiser, more whole. Avoidants operate under a paradox. They crave connection, but they fear it with every fiber of their being. They want love, but they've learned to see it as a threat, a force that will strip away their independence, their control, their safety. So they create distance, not because they don't care, but because closeness feels like a wildfire they can't contain. They pull back, expecting you to pull them closer, to chase after them, to prove that love can survive their walls. But when you go no contact, you rewrite the script. You say, I'm done playing this game, and that silence is a thunderclap, echoing through their carefully controlled world. Picture them in the aftermath of your absence. At first, they lean into the silence, convincing themselves this is what they wanted. Freedom, relief, a chance to breathe. They tell themselves they're fine, that they don't need you, that solitude is their safe haven. But solitude is not the same as peace. The longer your silence stretches, the more it reveals. Avoidants are skilled at detachment, at pushing emotions down until they're buried beneath layers of denial. They might throw themselves into work, lose themselves in new distractions, even start new relationships to fill the void. But these are bandages on a wound that won't heal. The truth they're avoiding is that they wanted you, needed you, valued you, more than they could admit, even to themselves. This is where no contact becomes a mirror, reflecting the emotions they've spent their lives running from. They start to feel the absence in ways they didn't expect. A fleeting thought of you during a quiet moment, a pang of regret when they see something that reminds them of your shared past, a realization that the connection they pushed away was unique, irreplaceable. They might not name it as pain, not at first. Avoidants struggle to recognize their own emotions in real time. Where an anxious heart feels the sting of loss immediately, an avoidance pain is delayed, creeping in like a shadow when the distractions fade. They might feel restless, irritated, or numb, not realizing that these are the echoes of a deeper loss. This delayed pain is what makes no contact so powerful for avoidance. They're used to controlling the emotional temperature of their relationships, dictating when to draw close and when to retreat. They assume they can create distance whenever they feel overwhelmed, confident that you'll still be there when they're ready to return. They rely on the safety net of your presence, the comfort of knowing you're still emotionally invested even from afar. But when you go no contact, you take that safety net away. You show them that space doesn't always mean safety, it can mean loss. You force them to confront the reality that their avoidance has consequences, that their need for distance might cost them something they can't replace. At first, they might not even register the impact. Avoidants are experts at compartmentalizing, at pushing emotions aside until they're buried beneath layers of denial. They might tell themselves they're better off alone, that the relationship wasn't that important, that they've moved on. But emotions, no matter how deeply suppressed, have a way of surfacing. The longer your silence stretches, the louder it becomes. They start to notice the small things: a song you loved, a place you visited together, a moment when your presence made them feel seen. These reminders chip away at their defenses, forcing them to face the void they created. And because they've spent their lives avoiding emotional discomfort, they don't have the tools to process this pain. It might show up as frustration, as restlessness, as an inexplicable sense of emptiness, but it's there, a quiet storm brewing beneath their surface. This is why their silence doesn't mean they're fine. One of the biggest misconceptions about avoidance is that their lack of communication, their absence of outward emotion, means they're unaffected by your absence. But silence is not indifference. It's a defense mechanism, a wall they've built to keep their emotions at bay. Avoidants don't process feelings the way others do. Where an anxious heart wears its pain openly, an avoidant buries theirs, convincing themselves they're in control. But control is not the same as healing. The longer they go without contact, the more the reality of your absence sinks in. They start to wonder why you haven't reached out, why you're not fighting for them, why the connection they took for granted is gone. And that wonder, that uncertainty, is what shakes them to their core. Your silence is a boundary, not a weapon. When you go no contact, you're not trying to hurt them. You're choosing to honor your own worth. You're saying, I deserve a love that shows up, a love that stays, a love that meets me halfway. And that act of self-respect is what makes no contact so powerful. You're not just stepping back from them, you're stepping into your own strength. You're breaking free from a cycle that asked you to chase, to beg, to prove your worth to someone who couldn't receive it. You're showing them, without words, that love is not a one-way street, that relationships require effort, that emotional absence has consequences. And in that act of courage, you disrupt their entire world. Avoidants wanted connection all along, but they didn't know how to handle it. Deep down, they crave love just like you, but their relationship with intimacy is a battlefield. They've learned to see closeness as a threat, a force that will overwhelm them, strip away their independence, leave them vulnerable to pain. So they push it away, not because they don't care, but because they care too much, feel too deeply, fear too greatly. When you go no contact, you force them to face that fear, to sit with the emotions they've spent their lives avoiding. You show them that love is not a game of hide and seek, that connection requires vulnerability, that their walls might keep them safe, but they also keep them alone. This is your moment of liberation, your declaration of freedom. When you go no contact, you're not just walking away from an avoidant. You're walking toward a life that honors your worth, your heart, your truth. Avoidants operate under a deeply ingrained belief that people don't truly leave them. They expect distance, but they don't expect finality. They assume that even if they push you away, you'll still be there, emotionally tethered, waiting for their signal to return. This belief isn't arrogance, it's a survival mechanism shaped by a lifetime of learning that vulnerability leads to pain, that closeness is a risk they can't afford. They've seen partners chase after them, fight for them, keep the connection alive even when they pulled away. They believe they have time, that you'll always be there, that they can drift in and out of your life without consequence. But when you go no contact, you shatter that belief. You show them that love has boundaries, that your heart is not a revolving door. You force them to face the possibility of loss, real, permanent loss. At first, they might rationalize your silence. They might tell themselves you're just hurt, that you'll reach out eventually, that you're still thinking of them. But as your absence becomes undeniable, a different realization sets in. They start to wonder if they miscalculated, if they assumed too much, if this time you're not just waiting in the background. This realization is unsettling because it challenges their entire worldview. They're forced to confront the truth they've spent their lives avoiding. Their presence mattered, their absence had consequences, their avoidance cost them something irreplaceable. Picture them in this moment, standing in the wreckage of their own choices. They replay memories, moments when you showed up with your whole heart, when you loved them fiercely, when you saw them in ways they couldn't see themselves. They start to feel the weight of what they pushed away, the value of what they took for granted. This is when they might reach out, not with a full commitment, but with small gestures to test the waters. A text that feels like a lifeline, a like on your post that carries the weight of their uncertainty, a question that doesn't require real engagement. These aren't acts of courage, they're acts of fear, fear that you've truly moved on, fear that they've lost something they didn't realize they needed until it was gone. But you're done settling for crumbs. You're done accepting half-hearted gestures when you deserve a love that's whole, consistent, reciprocal. When you go no contact, you show them that love isn't a game of cat and mouse. You show them that your heart is worth more than their indecision, that your time is worth more than their hesitation. You force them to face the truth. Relationships require effort, and emotional absence is felt, whether they acknowledge it or not. This is your power, not in changing them, but in choosing yourself, not in waiting for them to wake up, but in waking up to your own worth. Avoidants aren't immune to pain, they just process it differently. Their silence, their detachment, isn't a sign of indifference. It's a defense mechanism, a wall they've built to keep their emotions at bay. They've spent their lives learning to suppress feelings, to push them down until they're buried beneath layers of denial. But emotions, no matter how deeply buried, have a way of surfacing. The longer your silence stretches, the louder it becomes. They start to notice the small things, a song you loved, a place you visited together, a moment when your presence made them feel seen. These reminders chip away at their defenses, forcing them to face the void they created. And because they've spent their lives avoiding emotional discomfort, they don't have the tools to process this pain. It might show up as frustration, as restlessness, as an inexplicable sense of emptiness, but it's there, a quiet storm brewing beneath their surface. This is why no contact is so powerful. It removes the safety net they relied on, the comfort of knowing you were still there, still waiting, still willing to bridge the gap they created. It forces them to confront the reality that people don't wait forever, that emotional detachment has consequences, that relationships require effort to maintain. They might never admit it, they might never reach out, but they feel it. The weight of your absence, the loss of a connection they didn't fully appreciate until it was gone. And in that moment, they're left with a choice, to repeat their patterns or to face their fears, to stay stuck or to grow. But your journey isn't about their growth, it's about yours. You're not here to fix them, to wait for them, to hold space for someone who refuses to show up. You're here to stand in your strength, to recognize that their avoidance is a reflection of their journey, not your worth. When you go no contact, you break free from a cycle that asked you to chase, to beg, to prove your worth to someone who couldn't receive it. You choose self-respect over waiting, healing over heartbreak, clarity over confusion. You remind yourself and them that your time, your energy, your heart are sacred. They are yours to give to those who see you, who choose you, who meet you in the beautiful, messy, real dance of connection. So, stand in this moment, feel the power of your choice. You are not defined by their avoidance, their indecision, their fear. You are defined by your courage, your resilience, your refusal to settle for less than you deserve. Thank you for showing up for yourself today. Thank you for having the strength to step out of a cycle that no longer serves you. Thank you for choosing healing over heartbreak, self-respect over sacrifice, and clarity over chaos. Your heart is a gift, your love a treasure, and they are too valuable to be spent on someone who can't meet you where you are. Keep moving forward. Keep trusting that what's meant for you will never require you to beg, to chase, to convince. You are enough, more than enough. The love you seek is already within you, waiting to be shared with someone who's ready to walk beside you, hand in hand, heart to heart. This is your moment. Own it. Rise. And let the world see the unstoppable force that is you.